Good morning, spiritual companions. This morning, we are reading The Blissful Life as realized through the teachings of Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, compiled with commentary and notes by Robert Powell. We are reading from the gems or aphorisms, starting on page 37. Once you know your mind and its miraculous powers, and remove what poisoned it, the idea of a separate and isolated person, you just leave it alone to do its work among things for which it is well suited. To keep the mind in its own place and on its own work is the liberation of the mind. When you demand nothing of the world, nor of God, when you want nothing, seek nothing, expect nothing, then the supreme state will come to you uninvited and unexpected. Forget the known, but remember that you are the knower. Don't be all the time immersed in your experiences. Remember that you are beyond the experiencer, ever unborn and deathless. Remember, you cannot abandon what you do not know. To go beyond yourself, you must know yourself. Robert Powell's commentary. That which one does not know, does not understand, continues to haunt one, to stir the mind. On the other hand, once something is fully understood, you naturally leave it alone, and it leaves you alone. It has been adequately dealt with, and so is finished. A close connection exists with the question of the conscious and the subconscious. The subconscious, being the depository of the not understood and the half understood, acts as the psychological motor of the persona. To expose the mind's recesses to awareness is to empty the subconscious of its contents, and is an essential part of the process of self-exploration. It is absolutely vital for leaving behind the patterns of thought, desire, and all forms of habituation that collectively make up the little self, i.e., the ego. J. Krishnamurti has said much the same thing when he describes how any psychological residue of ill-digested thought or experience perpetuates the mind's restless activity, creating ever new thought and preventing the peaceful state when thought is in abidance and there is an opportunity for clear vision. Continuing with the gems. Earnestness is not a yearning for the fruits of one's endeavors. It is an expression of an inner shift of interest away from the false, the unessential, the personal. Commentary. In other words, the desire for liberation is of a different order than desire as normally defined. In fact, desire, in this context, may be an altogether wrong term because of its common associations. Generally, the word implies a movement toward gratification induced by one's background, whereas earnestness implies a movement away from the usual gratification or end-seeking, because there has been an insight into its mechanicalness and meaninglessness. Such a movement, which is independent of one's background, is also driven by an entirely different kind of energy, whereas our ordinary desire for this or that may be said to be a horizontal movement in time. The movement of earnestness is seen as a vertical one, from the world of space-time into timelessness, and is necessarily always accompanied by insight. Maybe we should invent a new word for this process. See also Maharaj's following statement. The desire for truth is the best of all desires, yet it is still a desire. All desires must be given up for the real to be. Remember that you are. This is your working capital. Rotate it, and there will be much profit. A man who claims to know what is good for others is dangerous. Commentary. Do-gooders of the world, take heed. There can be no consciousness without awareness, but there can be awareness without consciousness, as in deep sleep. Commentary. Consciousness is its contents. Awareness has no contents, but is that which makes consciousness possible. One might also say that consciousness is to awareness what computer or machine intelligence is to the computer programmer's intelligence. Consciousness does not shine by itself. It shines by a light beyond it. The mind must learn that beyond the moving mind, there is the background of awareness which does not change. The mind must come to know the true self and respect it, and cease covering it up like the moon which obscures the sun during solar eclipse. While the mind is centered in the body and consciousness is centered in the mind, awareness is free. The body has its urges and mind, its pains and pleasures. Awareness is unattached and unshaken. It is lucid, silent, peaceful, alert and unafraid, without desire and fear. Meditate on it as your true being and try to be it in your daily life, and you shall realize it in its fullness. Awareness becomes consciousness when it has an object. The object changes all the time. In consciousness, there is movement. Awareness by itself is motionless and timeless, here and now. Commentary. As we have seen on the previous pages, Maharaj distinguishes between awareness and consciousness. The former is absolute. The latter is relative to its content and has a subject. The world is as illusory as the images of a movie projection, as against the transitoriness of the images projected. The awareness, the light, is constant and real. All consciousness is limited. and therefore painful. At the root of consciousness lies desire, the urge to experience. End of today's reading.